I want to explore with you this week is of a female pilot who was an international celebrity during her lifetime and arguably still is. She was the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, and in just 5 years she set 7 speed and distance records. She was instrumental in the formation of the 99s. It was an organisation that inspired girls to get involved in aviation and start flying. She was charismatic, she was cool under pressure, she was independent, persistent, and she was courageous. She became a feminist icon. The woman I want to talk about today is Amelia Earhart. Amelia was born in 1897 in Kansas. She was an adventurous kid. She loved climbing trees, belly slamming her sledge down snow-covered hills, collecting moss and worms and putting them in jars, and catching tree toads. And then, when she was 7, she saw her first roller coaster in St. Louis. And she was inspired to put together her own rickety rump that ran down the side of her garden shed. She climbed up to the peak of her makeshift roller coaster, and without hesitation, she came zooming down the ramp in a wooden box and flew off the edge. The wooden box, it crashed and smashed, and Amelia emerged with a torn dress and a bruised lip. Feeling exhilarated, she ran to find her sister, shouting, "Oh, Pidge! It was just like flying!" From that moment on, Amelia's adventurous spirit was set free, and the possibility of one day seeing the world from a higher viewpoint became her goal. Men have been trying to fly for decades, in some very inspiring ways, some bizarre and some absolutely ludicrous ways. But the most successful were the Montgolfier brothers, who invented the hot air balloon, and Otto Lilienthal, who invented the glider. He was known in Germany as the Glider King. Aviation was taking off, literally, and Amelia wanted to be a part of it. In 1903, this was a year before Amelia had had her adventure in her makeshift roller coaster in her backyard. The Wright brothers gained world fame for inventing, building, and flying the very first successful motor-operated aeroplane. Now, they couldn't have done it without the support of their sister, Catherine Wright, whose support and help and encouragement and drive led them to success. She then flew with them in 1909. In 1910, Ramonde de la Roche would become the world's first female licensed pilot. She would be followed by many women, and it would be Harriet Quimby who became America's first female licensed pilot. She would also become the first female to cross the English Channel in an aeroplane in 1912. Women were being drawn to the skies, and soon it would be Amelia's turn. Amelia kept a scrapbook of all the successful women who were in predominantly male-orientated jobs. This would give her the courage and determination to keep her dream alive. You see, in Amelia's youth, American women were not allowed to vote and were treated with very little validation. But the following years, women from all over the world would prove their worth, and American women would win the vote in March 1920. This would be the very same year that Amelia would take her first flight in a plane, and it would take her 300 feet off the ground, about the same height as London's Big Ben. Amelia knew she had to fly. Amelia saved up her money and went to seek out a female pilot who would teach her to fly. She found Anita Snook, an amazing female pilot who had already set a lot of female aviation firsts. They became great friends and advocates for other females getting involved in aviation. Anita, she was known as saying, "I will fly as cleverly, as audaciously, as thrillingly as any other man aviator in the world." Amelia got her pilot's license in 1923. She had already set a record as the first female to fly to an altitude of 14,000 feet. She joined aeronautical societies that studied the art and the science of building planes. She wrote for local newspapers all about her flying experiences. Then, in 1928, she became the first female passenger to fly across the Atlantic. She was nicknamed the Queen of the Air by the United Press. And she told them, "Maybe someday I'll try it alone." The same year, she would fly solo across the North American continent and back. This woman was on a roll. She set up an organisation for female pilots called the 99s. It provided help, support and funding and mentoring for women who wanted to fly just like Amelia. Then, Amelia Earhart proved true to her word and she flew solo across the Atlantic non-stop, becoming the first woman to do so. She was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Amelia started planning a round-the-world flight, but sadly, she would only make it halfway. She disappeared, never to be found again. Amelia's story, though, has not been forgotten. Her career in aviation inspired so many women to take to the skies and follow her adventurous spirit, which is exactly what Amelia would have wanted. So, let's celebrate Amelia Earhart's inspiring story and take to the skies ourselves. Let's learn what it takes to fly. In order to fly, you need to know the basic principles of flight: thrust, drag, lift and weight. But what do they mean? It's okay, I'll tell you. Thrust is the aerodynamic force that pulls or pushes the plane forward. Drag is the opposing force or friction that resists the motion of the plane moving. Weight is simply gravity or mass pulling the plane down. And lift is the opposing force that holds the plane in the air. Thrust, drag, lift and weight. For flight, thrust needs to be equal or greater than drag. So, we've learnt the basic principles of flight. Let's take off. If you look at a real plane, you'll notice that the wings are tilted. This makes the air that moves over the wing a lot faster than the air that travels beneath it. Faster moving air has less pressure than slower moving air, and this creates lift. Now, if you look at the wings, you'll notice some special flaps that will help direct the plane. These are called ailerons. But how do they work? Well, let's lift off and find out. What do you think of my plane? Huh? You can make your own, you know. Just out of a cardboard box and some tin foil. Now, let's learn to fly. Hold out your hands and your arms to the sides. These are your wings. Your thumbs are your ailerons.
If you point one aileron to the sky and one aileron to the ground, your plane will tilt to the side. This is called a roll. You can do it the other way as well. Pretty cool, right? Now, you can turn left and right with the rudder. That's the vertical flap on the vertical wing on your tail. Turn it left and you'll fly left. Turn it right and you'll fly right. And what about the horizontal flaps on your horizontal wings on the tail? They're called elevators. They will point the nose of your plane up or down. Now we know how to fly our plane. Lift off! Whee!
The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. The fears are paper tigers. You can do anything you decide to do. You can act to change and control your life. And the procedure, the process, it's its own reward. Amelia Earhart was an amazing, pioneering pilot. She broke the mold. She did the unexpected. And she did the impossible. And she challenged the rest of us to be just as bold. Amelia dreamed big. She aimed high and changed the world.